Hey everyone, welcome to the CyberHub Engage Daily Cyber Briefing Friday wrap up, our second ever episode. And last week we had Ann from Microsoft. This week I've got the great Anton Chuvakin. I'm gonna murder your name and I apologize. So please forgive me. Head of Security Strategy at Google Chronicle, who's gonna be joining me to talk about some of the latest stories that have been happening this week in cybersecurity. Before we get started though with Anton, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Get Smart Eye Technologies. Make sure you check out Get Smart Eye Technologies on Facebook and Twitter, and check out the cool stuff that those guys are doing when it comes to the privacy of your documents. And now let's get into our daily Friday, or our daily Cyber Briefing Friday wrap up. This segment is new, so I'm bound to mess up my first few times. So Anton, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Sure, of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm so ecstatic for this one, for this episode. One, because our conversation like this week was just absolutely awesome. But when we look at this week, I think we all started this week with with that story coming out of Louisiana, with Governor of Louisiana declaring a state of emergency over a ransomware attack. So we're used to state of emergencies being over hurricanes, flooding, fires, ransomware attacks. Is this going to be a new trend, Anton?
I hope not, because back in my analyst days, I didn't really deal with malware per se, but of course the topic of ransomware comes up all the time. And a lot of us that kind of observe the industry were always like surprised about it, because ransomware is a type of malware, and you probably have invested in anti-malware tools, antivirus, whatever. So why is ransomware biting you? So to me, for a lot of people that I've seen, ransomware seems like I would be very politically incorrect and say it's kind of a poor people's problem. It's a problem for people who don't have good coverage by security tools. But it turns out you're wrong, because there are some reasonably well-secured companies that got hit by ransomware and suffered. So at this point, I'm kind of on the fence as far as should I blame the victim for negligence, or is it genuinely that the attacker got the better of it? So I'm not sure. Frankly, is ransomware an emergency? Well, it can be if you have a city or a municipal agency that's usually not known for good budgets on security, and your citizens' data is encrypted or systems are paralyzed. I mean, I can see that it can be an emergency, right? If you digitize a lot of your municipal or city services and then ransomware just shuts them down, I mean, it doesn't sound extreme. It may not sound extreme.
Right. I think for the average citizen, though, I think for security folks, it's really easy for us to look at a ransomware attack and realize you either pay it, you don't pay it. Do you have backups? Do you not have backups? You kind of go through your incident response plan, and you decide how to handle it. From a governor of a state who was just literally, he got reelected on Saturday, and Sunday morning they go, "Hey, Mr. Governor, we hope you're over your hangover from your party. By the way, we're under a ransomware attack." And his first order of business is state of emergency.
Yeah, but I mean, the news from the news, I couldn't figure out how much of the infrastructure and what type of infrastructure is actually offline. Like, you probably, the big previous case was the Baltimore case, right?
Well, it kind of started in Atlanta, right? In March of last year.
Actually, that's right. Atlanta had a case of that. But it's not like city services. It's not like sewage would be overflowing or electricity shut down. It wasn't that. It was mostly the digital services, information services got shut down, right?
I can tell you that in Louisiana, from what I've seen, they shut down all of the technological all the websites were down for the specific municipalities that were under attack. They were able to recover, so they kind of shut everything down, unplugged it, and then one by one started replugging and kind of scanning, testing, recovery, and so forth. They're still in recovery mode from what we've been able to kind of identify. As of this morning, I can tell you that they're still in recovery mode. There's still some functions that aren't back online yet.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
just
think
curious
there's
whether it's only information services or whether there are any systems that are control systems that are affected. So to me, if a control system for something in the physical realm is affected, I'd probably say state of emergency. I mean, I'm not an expert in state of emergency conditions, but to me, it sounds like it's more. It sounds like it's actually not crazy to say it's a state of emergency if you're gonna lose, if you have a chance to lose electricity or sewage or water or something. Like, to me, that's fair. Yeah.
I think part of it is also budgetary. So from a state perspective,
you can't get money to fix things unless it's an
right.
emergency.
I mean, they're not attacking the state of Louisiana, so they weren't attacking necessarily state infrastructure. They were attacking a lot of different counties that are really underfunded. And like you said, if it's a ransomware, it could be a poor man's problem. And if you're poor, you're more likely to fall into that trap. And by declaring a state of emergency, you free up state funds to help them in recovery. You also are able to give them state resources without any of the bureaucracy.
But doesn't it make the story less glamorous, though? Like, this almost like makes it mundane.
Well, I think it shows just how behind our legislation and funding on a state and city and county levels at, where we have several counties in a state that go under a ransomware attack, and the only way for them to get money is to have the governor declare a state of emergency. In Atlanta, that wasn't the case, because when the mayor decided that they weren't going to pay the ransomware attack, she got city council, and city council backed her up on the decision and essentially passed a unanimous vote, giving her, I think 30 or 40 million dollars to go out and recover from it.
Actually, that reminds me, because somebody was kind of making fun of, I don't recall, some agency somewhere for doing that, and they said, well, don't they have backups? But the thing is that if you have backups, if everything is actually fine, you need people to come to work and restore from backups and do cleanups and reimage. So even if everything is in your plan works out, you still have a cost, and it's a sizable cost. It's like,
because it's
labor,
an HR cost.
Right, it's a big labor cost. So it's almost like ransomware is one of those attacks where, and again, I'm a big detection response guy, but I think this is an attack that I'd rather prevent. Obviously, ransomware detection is an idiotic problem. The criminal sends you an email, says, hey, you're ransomware. So there's no real need to detect it per se. You have to either stop it or you go to your emergency plans, right? Like, I'm trivializing it a little bit, but I think this is one problem where more prevention is probably the answer, right? I mean,
well,
what can I say?
It's a lot of prevention. It's a lot of awareness. Right, it's understanding how the ransomware, how the malware got weaponized. What systems did it shut down? How long was it in your network? I mean, in Atlanta scenario, it was 8 months in the network before they weaponized it and turned it on.
Oh, so they can affect backups and stuff. Yeah, this reminds me, by the way. So my colleague at Chronicle, Brendan Levine, he did a study of malware that kind of goes back a good number of years using virus total data. But the funny part is, when I was reading his paper that you can find online, it kind of said that we are celebrating roughly 5 years of ransomware epidemic. Like, the ransomware became a big thing in 2015. To me, that number exploded my brain a little bit, because you think of it, oh my God, it's a scourge, but then you realize we've been living with it for 5 years. So 5 years of pretty rampant ransomware.
So before ransomware, we had DDoS. And so DDoS attacks were the original ransomware, right? I attack your website, I call you, I email you, and I say...
we had DOS, we had DOS for ransom, but it's probably less... I don't think people would call Amazon and say, we're going to DOS you. People would call a small business in some region where maybe there's no police or whatever. So I've heard more of that of being mostly a regional crime, not in the US. I haven't seen much DOS for ransom DOS in the US.
So originally from 2010 to 2014-15, that was the primary crime method for cyber criminals, was the DOS for ransom attacks, specifically and predominantly on online businesses.
But so like online gambling,
online trading platforms, finance platforms, anywhere where there was an active commerce that was needed. DOSing your site for 2 hours could make you lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue.
Yeah, I usually associate this age with the credit card theft being the most popular cybercrime. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there was a fair number of DOS for at least versus some businesses. Yeah.
You know, we kind of go into the state of emergency. I kind of want to skip to this whole Twitter's now going to allow multi-factor authentication beyond
Yeah.
text messaging. About time, because I know that Google allows you to have the Google Authenticator as your MFA. So that way that's constantly changing and updating. And so, you know, you can't fall victim for SIM jacking, but is it about time that we just get rid of SMS multi-factor authentication altogether?
You know, this is a fun second topic to touch, because it's been kind of interesting for me to watch how this to me is pointing at a more interesting story, namely how a lot of the discussion on Twitter or on social media where security professionals are present kind of goes to perfectionism very quickly. Like, okay, so you have a chance. So to me, I am a little bit contrarian, because I think if you have a 4-character password that you don't have to change, and it's your only factor, and then you improve it to say SMS, to me that's still a big step forward. Like, I don't really, like, I've seen people who really say multi-factor using SMS must die, but these people apparently forget that there are some pretty important online resources that don't have any multi-factor. So I am kind of a little leery to like get my baseball bat and start beating the SMS MFA over the head, because I just see some resources where there is no MFA. So would people honestly say not having SMS MFA, having SMS MFA is just as good as not having MFA? Like, I cannot. I'm sorry.
Right.
I think it's probably a small step forward, but it's a step forward.
I hate to agree with my guests all the time, because I feel like that makes for a very boring conversation. But I completely agree with you. I think the fact is that as long as SIM jacking is still a social engineering and requires some sort of level of sophistication where someone's already going to know that it's right. SMS MFA is still going to be something real. It's the question becomes is if SIM jacking becomes really easy to do, almost like malware, ransomware, or phishing.
Then it needs to go.
Then it needs to go.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Yeah, correct.
But I'd rather have.
Because actually, if you have this short, unchangeable password, and then that's password, your password is password, but you have SMS MFA, you tend to think less about the password, and you may end up with a shitty password. And then if somebody scales attacks against SMS MFA, then you're really screwed. So I think that's a fair point. That if somebody scales them and people really rely on that a lot more than a password, then they have a lot of bad passwords, then you're screwed. I think that's fair.
So I was having, before we recorded today, I had coffee with a friend of mine who owns a pen testing company. And we were talking about a recent pen test they did where he said in a day, we were able to crack 1,400 passwords at our organization because of weak passwords. And weak passwords still remains the number one single greatest obstacle on the planet. Yeah. Even before MFA, let's just get creative in how we maintain our passwords.
But didn't you ask your Microsoft guest last week about that? Because Microsoft had a lot of really solid research to kind of reduce reliance on passwords and possibly get rid of passwords eventually. I recall talking to some of the Microsoft people at last RSA. It had some really cool tech they're planning, right?
They do, but a predominant factor of it is biometrics. And
yes, correct.
I'm a strong advocate of I don't want any company that could possibly be breached to have my biometrics. Like, I'm okay with my password being stolen. I'm okay with my date of birth being stolen. I'm a bit weary of just trusting someone blindly with my biometrics. Yeah, and it seems like that's where everyone's going. Fingerprint, facial recognition. And I get that those are harder to fake and forge. But people forget that there's places in the world that are building buildings with 3D printers. So you want to tell me that if I don't steal your biometrics, I can't have a 3D printer print your face or your fingerprint?
But then, what about the hardware stuff? Like, I mean, Google obviously has a lot of authenticate using the phone stuff where you have to have it in your possession. I mean, as a second factor, not the only factor.
Right.
So would you then prefer that to biometric?
I'd prefer an authentication app like the Google Authenticator that I use. I mean, I told you that on our call. I'm a predominantly G Suite business, so here I am telling someone know how to attack my organization, but then at the same time, I also realized that with G Suite you have the ability to do MFA through an authenticator and SMS, and so you're able to really pick and choose what tools you want to use. You also can use it through the USB, which is the second authenticator.
Let's talk about this briefly. Like a lot of people had, like, I mean, to me, hardware tokens are having a comeback, right? So like FIDO, all this FIDO stuff and all the USB Titan keys from us. Like, do you think so? We'll switch into topics to authentication, like, but do you think that's progress if you have to have a hardware token again?
So
like
so here's my problem with
ID
that.
keys and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
So yes, it's a level of progress, but then we go and the second I allow you to put a USB in your computer, I have to allow you to put any USB. I can't limit it to one USB.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So then we're back to having the discussion of I'm at a trade show, someone gives me a Discon key or a USB with as part of the swag, and I don't think anything of it, and I'm able to put it in, and now I've downloaded whatever on my computer.
Yeah, true, but so we hate passwords, we hate biometrics, we hate hardware tokens, we hate SMS. Like, we're kind of screwed, right? That's really the whole list, right? of authentication methods. Yeah, sure, there's experimental stuff, like, I don't know, like watching, well, no, not biometrics, right? Like, even anything to do with, like, keyboard typing cadence, that's still technically biometric, right?
Yeah,
like
but I think you're.
By...
So in Atlanta at Hartsfield-Jackson, I flew internationally a few weeks ago, and to board a Delta flight out of Hartsfield-Jackson, they require you to use your biometrics. You can no longer
require. No. Require or suggest?
It's pretty much. I had a paper ticket that I printed at home because I didn't want them to use my biometrics.
Okay.
I had a carry-on. So I never even had to go to the check-in counter at the international terminal.
And you had the driver license,
right? And and I've got all the perks of flying quickly. I don't have to go through normal security. I go through TSA pre-check, all that good stuff. So I get to the gate to board my flight, and I hand the gate agent my ticket, and they go, "No, please look there." And I look there, and it takes my picture, and it prints out a ticket, and it says that's your seat, and I'm like. Huh?
Interesting. So you don't? Yeah, I did not know. I thought it's like a choice / convenience. I didn't know it became a mandate.
I think they made it a mandate at this point because it's. I can tell you that we boarded the plane so fast. There were no tickets to scan. People just stood there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No one had the annoying phone. Okay, my screen went off.
It's too dark, but battery low, blah blah blah. Yeah. I think to me.
I mean, so that kind of makes me a bit worried because Delta has my information, and then it's sharing that information with U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
Correct.
So you realize there's a lot of data flow going on here with your biometric data. You pray it's secure, but would you trust? Would you trust Facebook with your biometrics, which they already have, or would you trust Twitter with your biometrics, which you already have because we upload pictures and Facebook has the facial recognition algorithm and it goes, do you want to tag Anton in this picture? And you're like, how to know it was Anton? We're not, but it knows it's you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're beyond it. I don't think we hate it as much as, you said we hate this, and I don't think we hate it all. I just... As security people, we're predominantly paranoid.
We're nervous about it, yeah. I think that, but I think, I don't recall who that was. One of my industry colleagues basically said, fighting face recognition today is like fighting cars in 1919. I think it was Daniel Messner or somebody who said that.
Right.
Like fighting face recognition now is like fighting cars in 100 years ago. So like probably a hopeless cause. I don't know.
Correct.
By the way, are we running close to the time? You want to
we
touch
are.
on the topic,
so we have one more.
Yeah,
we have one more quick topic which we'll talk about today, which is the DNS over HTTPS discussion, which is kind of being pushed out there. Microsoft came out this week and said that they are going to allow companies on their own to decide if they want to be able to use DNS over HTTPS. And, there's good and bad arguments to this. Where do you what's your position on it?
When I saw this news, I was like, wasn't really super concerned about it or cared that much. But then I realized I do see a fair number of kind of security fights security or security fights privacy kind of stuff where you want to block something, you want to encrypt something, but then you want to monitor. So to me, this is a very interesting manifestation of the same debate that's being forced, kind of like we need to call it, right? Like I want to monitor network traffic, but hey, I want to encrypt to be secure. Wait a second, I can't have both. Well, I can do man in the middle. Well, that's a bad solution for many reasons. So I think that's the world we would live in, where these demands would kind of come into constant friction. And to me, the example I brought up before the podcast was people who push Facebook to do more content monitoring, policing, and people who push Facebook to encrypt more. Like, do they realize these are conflicting demands? So to me, with DNS, I think there are ways to deal with that. Like, it pushes a lot of decision making to an agent, to an endpoint. Like, if you cannot crack DNS, you can observe the request before it's encrypted. So it kind of gives the extra weapon to the endpoint guys doing security and takes the weapon away from the network guys, right? But I don't really know. I mean, I'm nervous. In the past when SSL version 1.3 came up and you can have challenges with intercepting data, yeah, it helps security, but then it decreases security monitoring. Frankly, I don't know. I may wake up one day and think, we can't lose all network monitoring. But then next day I wake up and think, hey, encryption is good, so we should have more encryption. I don't really know. At this point, it feels like in this particular debate, it's solvable by pushing stuff to the endpoint, and that's fine. But there would be things where it's not solvable, like, say, this whole social media end-to-end encryption with good content monitoring. That's not really possible, right?
Right. It's a very, very interesting debate, and one where I wish we had more time to debate, and maybe we'll just do a whole episode on this. Although I kind of want to do this in a panel with someone who's an advocate for it and someone who's completely against it.
It's like security fights security, security fights privacy. I don't know. It's literally security fights security in this case. Not
well, I think it's security fighting privacy. I feel like this debate is very similar to the blockchain debate between bad guys and good guys, where bad guys were like, blockchain, it's anonymity, I can do whatever I want, and the good guys were like, yeah, kind of, we're gonna fight blockchain. And then the good guys realized, wait a minute, I can monitor the bad guys on blockchain better than without it. And so
that it's like, I know people will make fun of me endlessly on Twitter for you mentioning blockchain on the podcast with Anton, because I've constantly made fun of other people for mentioning blockchain. But okay, I'll let it sleep. but yeah, this example and a few other examples do illustrate that there would be kind of conflicting security or security and privacy demands, and there would be no easy solution at all. Like, we would have to deal with it as a solution, right?
It is. And yeah, and you can make fun of me on Twitter all you want. I'm quite okay with it. I'm not one of those that gets upset when someone disagrees or makes fun of me. I urge debate. Let us debate, folks. But Anton, thank you so much for coming on our Friday wrap-up segment. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching, tuning in. We're back with more on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend. Stay warm. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving, so gobble, gobble, get your turkey on for Thursday.